when it comes to gamma decay, just understand. So first question that you asked is explain about gamma decay in radioactivity. So see, when it comes to gamma decay, just understand something about gamma, that gamma will always accompany something like an alpha or a beta decay, and gamma decay is more about energy. This is something related to energy more than anything, meaning that whenever any nuclear reaction happens, something like an alpha decay or a beta decay, the amount of energy that the nucleus has after these decay, we see that that energy is much more than what a normal nucleus should have. So that extra energy that nucleus has, it loses that extra energy so that it can come down to its normal state. So that extra energy that it uses or loses, so extra energy loss that happens, it happens in terms of gamma decay. So that basically is what becomes gamma decay. So gamma decay, just remember that in any radioactivity or any kind of nuclear reaction, whenever those reactions happen, the nucleus might have a lot more extra energy than it should, and that extra energy will be lost in terms of gamma. So this is basically what we'll see in case of gamma decay. How is the inertial confinement in nuclear fusion helps in production of cleaner energy? So with the help of inertial confinement, or not, it's not only about inertial confinement, even magnetic confinement. In both the cases, the energy that we are getting is clean because there is no extra waste that we are producing. For example, in general, let's say when it comes to fossil fuels like coal, petroleum, we know that a lot of carbon dioxide emission happens, correct? On the other hand, when we consider nuclear fission, in case of nuclear fission, what we see is that there will be a lot of long lived radioactive waste. So for example, plutonium based waste, or maybe transuranic materials. So there will be all those kind of waste that will be produced. But in case of fusion, with inertial confinement and with magnetic confinement, we see that there is no extra waste material being produced. And even if there is a byproduct like tritium water, it is very unstable and it very quickly converts into normal water. So we do not produce any kind of waste there. So that's why waste is drastically reduced. What is the principle of piezoelectric effect in nanotechnology? So piezoelectric effect, when it comes to piezoelectric effect, what we observe is that sometimes in a solid material, what may happen is that if you have a solid material, then when you apply pressure, on this solid material, it will produce electricity. All right, it will produce electricity. So that electricity that is produced due to mechanical stress or mechanical pressure is called as piezoelectric effect. And this is something that we often observe in many of the crystalline solids. We observe that a lot of times in crystalline solids, and largely until now it was known as a property of crystalline solids. But last year in 2022, we saw that for the first time, even in liquids, scientists were able to show how piezoelectric effect can actually work even in liquids, and that is something that they have been able to show for the first time just the last year. Reasons for artificial satellites orbiting around the earth without falling down. So when it comes to artificial satellites, any satellite that we are launching, so just understand that basic physics works. So when it comes to artificial satellites, there is a basic physics that works there, and this works on the first law of motion, Newton's first law. It works on Newton's first law. Now, what Newton's first law is basically about is balancing of forces. It is mainly about balancing of forces. Now, how exactly balancing the forces? Let's say you have a box like this. You exert equal amount of force from both the ends. Then in that case, what happens is that this box will not move. It will remain in its place. Why? Because force acting from both the sides on, let's say if this is the surface, force acting from both the sides is equal. So that's why there will be no movement. Similarly, in case of launching a satellite also, there are two basic forces that work. One, the force due to gravitation, right? For a satellite, what happens is that, let's say this is the earth and you have the satellite like this. So there will be one force that will be pulling, this is the gravitational force, and then there is the second force which is due to the motion, due to the motion, that is the thrust that we provided so that it can have an angular momentum there. So that's why these two forces, one, the thrust that we are providing when you launch a rocket, the thrust that you are providing, that's one force, and gravitational force is the second force, and we balance these two forces at a given height, and that's why it will be able to remain in its orbit. So these were the questions that you have asked. Then Sneo Sriti, you have an answer. Sorry, you have two questions. One is about radars and one is about GM mustard. So when it comes to a radar, when it comes to a radar basically is a system which will be used for, so it stands for radio detection and ranging. So now in this particular scenario, when it comes to a radar, what a radar does is that radar will have a transmitter and it will have a receiver. All right, it will have a transmitter and a receiver. Now transmitter will transmit a wave, transmitter will transmit waves, and these will be either microwaves, this will either be microwaves, or this will be radio waves, or sometimes a mix of two. So these waves will be transmitted by the transmitter of the radar, and let's say if there is any incoming aircraft or any incoming aircraft or missile, what happens is that it will go hit the surface of this missile or aircraft, and it will be reflected back, and the reflected back wave will be caught by the receiver. So what we do is, in this particular scenario, we already know that electromagnetic waves have a fixed speed. So we know the speed, and we are able to also we know the time that it took for it to go and come back. So we know the speed, we know the time, and then simple mathematics, distance is equal to speed into time, correct? So something as simple as that you can imagine here, that we are trying to calculate the distance, or rather we are actually trying to calculate the path of the entire path of the incoming aircraft or the missile, on the basis of all the signals that we are transmitting and the signals that we are receiving. So that is what we do in case of a radar. Then after that we have GM mustard, your second topic that you've asked. So when it comes to GM mustard, just remember that GM mustard is a kind of mustard, a mustard variant, which shows better yield. All right, it shows up to 25% better yield as compared to all the existing variant, the best of the existing variants. So that is why this kind of a mustard was about to be launched for the Indian markets, so that it could be given to the Indian farmers, where they could increase the productivity of mustard in the country. So that was the whole idea, but there were certain issues that or certain concerns that the Supreme Court had, and these concerns were largely related to, one, the problem that they can create for biodiversity, the problem that they can create for biodiversity, and secondly, the problem with regards to if there can be anything or any negative impact on human health. So these are two major reasons why the questions were raised on GM mustard, and hence the Supreme Court was of the view that we should first do a good analysis of each and everything related to GM mustard, and see if everything is fine, and if we don't see any problem with GM mustard, then only we should release the seeds for the markets, otherwise we shouldn't. So this is what was said about GM mustard. Then there are two questions that that has been asked by Shivani. So I have a doubt regarding blockchain technology. If every node validates the transaction by solving mathematical problem, then in transacting one block on average, how much time it takes? All right. So when it comes to these transactions, I mean, the calculations of these transactions, they can happen within seconds. I mean, not just 1 or 2 seconds, maybe it will take 30, 40 odd seconds for the calculation to run, or maybe sometimes it can take a couple of minutes. And that also is one of the criticisms, or you can say shortcomings, of cryptocurrency, because each and every cryptocurrency needs to go through this process, and because of that there is a delay. So for example, let's say when you use something like a UPI, you'll see that the payments are instant, right? Payments are instant because there are no nodes who are doing all these calculations to validate your payments. It will be simple verification of your account versus the other person's account, and the transaction can happen. So that's why these UPI transactions or online transactions that we generally do with our normal banking, they are pretty fast. But compared to that, cryptocurrency transaction, or a, 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 a Bitcoin transaction can take a few minutes also sometimes. So it can take something ranging from 30, 40 seconds up to maybe 4 or 5 minutes, depending on how fast the nodes could work out. If blockchain technology is used in simple transaction like Google Pay, CBDR, etc., then who would be possible nodes in this case? So, see, in this particular scenario, when it comes to Google Pay or any such mechanisms that we are using right now, in these mechanisms, there is no use of blockchain at all. These are not based on blockchain at all. They are based on simple different banking encryptions, but blockchain is not being used there. But if, let's say, if at all, even if they used blockchain, even then some bank will be the nodal agency, some bank will still be the central agency, and they will not let this be decentralized, because with decentralization and anonymity we have a lot of issues. So that's why it wouldn't be allowed in that sense. So just remember that when it comes to things like Google Pay, blockchain technology is not actually being used here. Then Aniket, you have asked some questions. Frequently changes in the climate, how we are able to know that the pattern of wind is due to climate change or it is solar wind? See, climate and solar are completely different things. All right. So when it comes to climate change, when we talk about climate change is a long-term phenomena. Climate change is not a daily phenomena. So you first have to understand the basic difference between weather and climate. So when you talk about the daily changes in atmospheric conditions, or temperature variations, etc., then in that case, what you are saying is weather. All right, that is weather. Climate is a long term situation. It's a long term average, you can say, a long term average of the weather conditions over a period of time. So that will be called as climate. So for example, tropical climate, when we say, so we know that tropical climate means that the temperatures might be sometimes on the higher side. It will not go very low. There will be summer, winters, etc. So temperature variations daily can happen. Climate is different. And similarly, when it comes to solar wind, also solar wind is very, very different. In this particular scenario, it is just a magnetic wind, so it will not have any impact on the daily weather or the climatic conditions. It's very different from that perspective. What is Oort cloud and how is it different from other clouds? That shouldn't be a question. See, Oort cloud is, you can say, the end of our universe or end of our solar system. That's, you can say, a boundary. It's like the boundary of our solar system. Whereas clouds, when we talk about clouds, these are clouds that we have in our atmosphere, which in many a ways they can be the carriers of precipitation. But there, in those cases, we are calling them as clouds, but they are not comparable to these clouds, the geographical clouds that we know of. While placing the satellite, what is the role of Lagrange point, and how it matters from one to another? See, while placing most of the satellites, there is no role of Lagrange points. Only when you are launching a satellite to the Lagrange point, only then there is a case for Lagrange points. Otherwise, Lagrange points have no significance while placing the satellites. Please explain about fractional distillation. So, fractional distillation basically is a kind of distillation where an indirect method is used, where the mixture is first heated. the mixture is first heated to a temperature that is a very high temperature, and such a high temperature where all the parts of the mixture would be in its gaseous state. It will be heated in a manner that all the parts of the mixture, they become gaseous. That is, they all are beyond the temperatures beyond everyone's boiling point. And then after that, slowly it will be cooled. It will be cooled slowly. So then in that sense, will one by one, once you reach the boiling point of any one part of that mixture, it will convert into liquid. As you keep on decreasing, somebody else's or some other materials boiling point will reach, and it will also convert into its liquid form. So one by one, as we keep on decreasing the temperature, we get all the different parts of the mixture. So that is what we do in case of fractional distillation. And just remember one more point, that when it comes to fractional distillation, it is often useful when the difference between the boiling points of the fluids in the mixture is very less. So normally less than 25 degrees Celsius. Geothermal energy. So in case of geothermal energy, just know that when we say geothermal, so again there are two words here, geo and thermal. So geo means what? Related to the earth. Thermal is related to the heat. So that's why this is a source of energy where you have energy coming from inside the earth, or heat from inside the earth is captured, and we try to use that captured heat for generating electricity. So that will be called as geothermal energy. So that heat can come outside from various different sources. So for example, hot springs or even volcanoes or boiling mud pots, etc., they can become the source of all this heat being released to the surface, and we try to catch this heat, take this heat, and then use it for electricity generation. And for that only we have three types of plants that we had discussed: the dry steam power plant, the flash steam power plant, and the binary cycle plants, which work on different mechanisms, but for the same purpose, that we could capture the heat coming from inside the earth and convert it into electricity. Why the states such as Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh rich in resources but lack in development of the state? There are a lot of reasons for that. I mean, the reasons are not exactly scientific, but a lot of these reasons are also social in nature. So when it comes to why they are rich in resources, you know that these are areas which are the older areas of the country. The central part, the plateau, the Chota Nagpur plateau and nearby areas, those are the uh, areas which are much older as compared to the other parts. For example, the northern Himalayas, etc., they are not as old. Now that is why they have more resource concentration. But you are asking why the development in development lacks. Now it will not be entirely correct to say that they lack in development. We have seen that these are also areas which have been handled differently, because you also have to understand that a large part of these areas are also tribal areas. So these tribal areas, you cannot say are underdeveloped, but they, because for a very long time they have had a very different lifestyle altogether. So the basic, I would also say, and obviously this is a topic of debate, but our definition of development also has to be revisited. That when we say that these are areas which are not developed, because more than not developed areas, I would say that these are forest dependent areas. These are forest dependent areas, and the people who have been living here for a very long time, they have been forest dependent, and that's why forest dwellers, and that's why there are forest rights acts also that cover the people who are living in these areas. Yes, there have been issues in reaching out from the government. We see that historically that did not happen with the British, and after only after the independence, we saw that a lot of these areas now started to get uh, associated with the the central political system. Otherwise, they were working in a very independent manner. For example, if you read Ramchandra Guha's India after Gandhi, then in that case, in that book, he writes about Chhattisgarh that there are areas in Chhattisgarh that until 1970s did not even know that there is an Indian flag, and they belong to a country called India. So this is something that he has written in his book, India after Gandhi. So the integration with the central political system started slow, and that's why these kind of questions are raised with regards to these areas. Does fiber wire which has been used during the internet is equal to nanowires? No, no, it's not the nanowires. Nanowires are completely different. You can't even see nanowires. The optical fiber cable you can very easily see, but nanowires are of the size of nanometers, so it's not visible easily for us. Explain about the Agni 5 missile and its range, starting end point, and what is the pathway of the trajectory. So Agni missiles, when it comes to Agni missiles, just remember that these are ballistic missiles. Now, when it comes to Agni 5 is an intercontinental range missile. All right, it is an intercontinental range missile. India says that the range is up to 5,500 kilometers, 5,000 to 5,500 kilometers. China claims that India is lying, and the actual range is up to 8,000 kilometers. Just that India doesn't want anyone to know, and that's why they're not telling anyone. But the actual range is supposed to be 8,000 kilometers according to China. But the official figures that India says is 5,500 kilometers. Start and end point in case of Agni missiles, it will be surface to surface missiles. Here, so these were some of the questions. Now, one set of question that has been sent to me contains 50 mains based questions. Vivek, you have sent 50 mains based questions. It's impossible for me to discuss this in the classroom because many of these things are already purely static areas that we have discussed, and these are answers. I mean, these kind of questions, I would rather suggest that you should try to write answers to these questions and submit it to us, and then have a further discussion on that, because these are not just concepts that we can explain to you. It's more about means based questions that have been asked. So my suggestion to you would be that you please write answers to these questions one by one, or maybe 3 questions at a time, 5 questions at a time, and please keep submitting these answers and get those corrected and the feedbacks. That will help you more, because these are otherwise static areas, and something it's impossible for me to cover it right here in the classroom. I'm sorry. So these are the questions that were sent. Then apart from that, if I'm just looking at your comments, if you have anything, please give a brief about blockchain working. All right. So just to repeat how blockchain works, first and foremost, we have blocks, right? We have blocks, and these blocks, they represent information, correct? They represent any, so you have blocks like these, and these blocks, they basically represent digital assets, right? They represent digital assets, any kind of digital asset, anything that has a digital presence, something as simple as a PDF file, a notes, for example, the class notes can be called as digital asset. So a PDF, music file, video file, a picture, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, so anything can become a digital asset. So digital asset will be there in these blocks. So blocks will keep it tight, keep it inside it, and it will basically encrypt it in a manner that somebody from outside cannot come and open it. Now these blocks are connected to chains. Now when we say connected to chains, what it simply means is that if somebody is using this blockchain network, let's say if I do a transaction, so there is a permanent block that has been created for my transaction. Let's say using the same blockchain network, somebody else also does a transaction, so that will become block number 2. Somebody else does the transaction, that becomes block number 3. So in this manner, one by one by one by one, we'll see that all these blocks will be added. All right, all these blocks will keep on getting added to this blockchain, and hence we say that it is a blockchain technology. Now the thing is that once you have added this block, you cannot remove the block. So that adds to the security of the blocks, that you cannot simply delete anything that you want, and anything that you have done gets you can say a permanent place in this blockchain technology. And then apart from that, the fact also is that all these transactions that are happening, they are happening completely anonymously, that the users also are anonymous. You do not know about their let's say identity through the blockchain network. You might know it. Let's say I could tell you that, okay, fine, my blockchain username is this, so then you would know. Otherwise, through blockchain technology, you would never know. Now all these blocks, when they are added, they'll have to go through an a validation process, and that validation will be done by the users who are there in this blockchain network, and these users are called as nodes. These users are called as nodes, and these nodes will have to validate each and every block, and then only the block gets added to the chain. So this is the basic working of how the blockchain network works. Please explain the satellite launch vehicle like PSLV. Now, in case of PSLV, PSLV stands for Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. So, Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, because of the word polar, largely, or we would say mainly used for polar satellite launches, polar or low Earth orbit satellites, mainly for low Earth orbit satellites or polar satellites. PSLVs will be used. Now, apart from that, what we see with PSLVs is that not only these, but other lightweight satellites also can be launched. Other lightweight satellites can also be launched. So, lightweight means when you have less than 1500 kg as their mass. All right. When their mass is less than 1500 kg, then in that case, we are saying that it is something that can be launched via PSLV. So that is what we observe about PSLV. So similarly, there are other launch vehicles depending on our requirements. Depending on our requirements. So for example, we have GSLV, which will be able to launch heavier satellites like the communication satellites. So when you have, let's say, any satellite which weighs more than 1700 kgs up to 4000 kg, we can launch them with the help of GSLVs. Apart from that, one more that we have now is one more that we have now is SSLV, that is Small Satellite Launch Vehicle, which is required mainly for launching the smaller satellites like the micro and the nano satellites. Explain about cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrencies are a kind of currency or kind of money that generally uses some kind of encryption. That's why cryptocurrency, because it is a cryptic or it is encrypted. So any kind of encryption. Largely what we see is that these cryptocurrencies have been popularized by blockchain. So blockchain encryption is one of the safest encryption for running any cryptocurrency, and especially with bitcoins it became very famous, very famous from that perspective. So cryptocurrencies can be used as money, but what we have seen is that large number of countries right now have banned the use of cryptocurrencies altogether. They have not allowed the use of cryptocurrencies because of the concerns that the countries have, because there is no control of any central authority. Like for example, we have the RBI. So RBI will not be able to control the flow of cryptocurrencies at all, and they would have no idea about what kind of transactions are happening, or even if illegal transactions are happening. So for example, let's say a lot of drug money, all the drug related transactions actually happen in cryptocurrencies, so that central authorities can never track them. So that's why there are all these kind of concerns that a lot of countries have had. Why to go with cryptocurrency instead of UPI? When you want anonymity, when you want anonymity and you don't trust the banking system, if at all, then in those cases. Please explain eccentricity. So eccentricity is a value that determines the shape of any given uh, shape. So for example, let's say when we talk about something like an ellipse, we discussed about ellipses. So in case of ellipses, what we see is that you have a shape like this. So they have eccentricity between 0 to 1. So eccentricity uh, is a value that determines what kind of shape you have. So for example, when it becomes 1, when it becomes 1, it takes a parabolic shape. In case of parabolic shape, we'll see that it takes a value of 1. Similarly, if let's say you have a hyperbolic shape, then in that case we see that E is greater than 1. So for a hyperbola, we see, so all these different shapes that we have, the shapes will be determined by the eccentricity factor. So in case of what we basically discussed, uh, in case of what we discussed is that elliptical, when we are looking at the elliptical shape, when you keep on varying it between 0 and 1, you get different types of ellipses. When you have 0, it is a complete circular orbit, and when you have it like 0.9999 so on, it's a highly eccentric orbit. So that is what we see. Please tell something about Kamran line and its utilization. I'm not really sure about this. I really don't know. Explain about quantum technologies. So quantum technologies are technologies which apply to subatomic particles, or particles which are very very small, which cannot be seen at our level. So what we see is that the science that governs them is also very different. The science that governs them is also very different. So that is where it comes from. Now lately we have seen that there has been a lot of interest in quantum technologies, because we have found that there are a lot of ways in which we can make the use of the mechanisms and the concepts of quantum mechanics to our advantage. So this is where we see that today quantum technologies have started to become very popular. So whether it is about quantum computer that uses two of the basic principles of quantum technologies of superposition and entanglement, or whether there are others. For example, we discussed about quantum tunneling and how quantum tunneling is useful in making scanning tunneling microscope. So similarly, we see that some property or the other can be utilized with the help of these concepts. So for example, China has been working on a quantum communication, and they are saying that this quantum communication that China is building, it is based on quantum entanglement, and it is going to be a hack proof communication system. That is it going to be impossible for anyone to even hack or even thinking of hacking this system. So it will be so secured because of the concepts of quantum entanglement. So similarly, we see that there is quantum cryptography and quantum chemistry and all these things also, which are related to quantum technologies. Does Bluetooth you used only for WPAN? Yes, that's correct. Because it has a range of only 10 meters, maximum 15, 17, or maybe up to 20 meters. So because you are going to use it in a very limited space, so that's why it will be. considered as the personal area network. Uh, Provide GI tag get product in 2023. I'm not sure what your question is. Can you repeat the question once? In topic triangulation in GPS, there are three satellites. Then how can receiver is able to see four of them? So basically, what happens is that essentially you need only three satellites. But in case of GPS, there is a fourth satellite that is used. So in case of GPS, what we see is that they use 3+1 satellites. Right? They use 3+1 satellites, and this fourth satellite helps them in increasing precision or in increasing accuracy. It will help them in increasing the accuracy, and that is precisely what we see with GPS. So that is why the fourth satellite is also there. Why lignite used mainly for electricity production? So lignite generally we don't want to use because lignite has very high amount of impurities, but because lignite production in India is high, we are able to manage in some manner because the ash is manageable, and we are able to clean them up in a manner that we can get some efficiency out of them. That's why lignite in some amount is used, but largely lignite is not used. Largely we try not to use lignite in electricity production, but if at all it does happen, what we basically see is that as a replacement for bituminous coal, it can actually be utilized. Fusion and fission difference. It's simple that in case of fusion, fusion means joining. So there are smaller particles which will join together. Where we see that hydrogen nuclei, they will join together to form a helium nucleus, and that is fusion. In case of fission, fission means to break. So that's why you'll have very big nucleus of uranium, and this uranium will split into two parts, and while splitting, it releases a lot of energy. In one of these back states, Odisha sponsored Indian hockey team and made two times hockey World Cup. Exactly, you're correct. So that's why I was saying that the definition of development many a times itself is the problem. That what we see as development may not exactly be the definition of development for everyone. So what is the concept behind winter solstice? This rather I would have Mukesh Jha sir answer your question tomorrow. Tomorrow onwards, he is going to take your session. But largely, these are related to how the movement of the Earth happens around the sun. So then there are some special conditions which are uh, generated twice in one given revolution, and that is where the concepts of summer and winter solstice comes from. In case of air to air missiles, how missiles are launched? So missiles could be launched either through an aircraft, or they could be launched through a helicopter. So either one of the two we can actually use, and we have been using it very recently. There was another air to air missile that was in the news, BVR, beyond the visual range missile, meaning that this is a missile that can even launch and go beyond the visual range. So visual range is how far the pilots can see. and this is a satellite which can actually go beyond the visual range of the pilots. So it will either use an aircraft or a helicopter in most of the cases. That in one way or the other, we are trying to train the systems, we are trying to train the software and train the machines in a manner that we don't have to program them to do something. We just have trained that this is how you have to perform your function. So that is what artificial intelligence is, and it will be based on a lot of core concepts related to machine learning, deep learning, neural networks. There are different types of neural networks. So all these will be able to design the machines or design the software that can learn from the data, which can understand the data, and they can understand how exactly they have to function in a given scenario. So that is the basic around artificial intelligence. Can superconductivity exhibited at room temperature? It's very, very difficult because we need very extreme conditions for superconductivity to work. So getting isolation is the very first thing for superconductivity, and that's why at room temperature, although there are a lot of experiments and studies that have worked on these things, but only under very special circumstances we have been able to achieve it. How does radar masking work when we say a submarine, ships, aircrafts are undetectable by the radar? What's the signs? So basically, what happens is that there is a certain distance that the waves should be able to travel, and then only they are able to give you a proper data. Now sometimes what happens is that when, let's say, either they are very close to the earth's surface. So for example, let's say if you are an aircraft which runs very close to the surface of the earth, then in that case it's very, very difficult for the radars to launch parallelly, right? If you are, let's say, at a height, it's easy for the radar systems. So let's say if you have a transmitter like this, it's easy for the systems to basically send waves like this. But if, let's say, you have a range like this for any given aircraft, then it becomes very difficult because there will be a lot of geological structures that will be in the place which will not let this radar work properly. And then some kind of masking is also done by many a times by launching extra signals. So for confusing the radar signals, we'll see that extra signals many a times are also used, so that it basically watches up the entire mechanism of working of radars. So there are these things that can be done with submarines or with even with aircrafts, etc. How to cover science and technology current affairs? Now see, when it comes to current affairs, the thing is that you will have to rely on the newspaper first and foremost. You'll have to rely on the newspaper, and there are articles in the newspapers that will become important. So that's going to be the first and most important source for you. And if you are following the daily Hindu analysis that we do on every morning, which is available on your app on a daily basis as well, you would be able to cover everything. If not, you have the webinars. At least go through the webinars and the topics that are being covered by the webinars, and the monthly magazines will complement the webinars. So at least two of these three sources you will have to use, so that you can keep getting current affairs and keep adding the current affairs to the required topic. Wherever we are discussing something, wherever those topics are being discussed, please just keep adding it. So for example, last week in the science and technology webinar, I had the science and technology and environment webinar, I had taken the topic of um, BT cotton and the problems that we are today seeing with BT cotton. This was an article that had come in uh, the first. November 1st Down to Earth magazine. And it's a very, very important article because now we have to understand the issues also with all these kind of cropping systems. So that's why you just have to keep adding to all this current affairs with the help of the daily news analysis, etc. Coin is a block or transaction. It's the money, it's coin. That's why it is. I mean, I think you are asking about Bitcoin. For evening batch, when art and culture will be done, I'm not really sure. I just know that after my class, I think tomorrow onwards, Mukesh sir will be taking environment and ecology classes. I do not know about art and culture and when it is going to begin. Difference between, sorry, phyto extraction, you can say, is a sub process of phytoremediation, where in it is a kind of phytoremediation where you are using the roots of a plant, so that you can go uh, you can extract anything that is harmful. So for example, heavy metals, etc., can be extracted with the help of roots of a plant. So that's why then in that case we'll say that it is phyto extraction. That will be called as phyto extraction. All right. So it's not, we shouldn't say difference, but in a manner you can say that phyto extraction is a process of phyto remediation. So this is how it works. And both of when it comes to both of these both of these processes will be useful mainly in scenarios where we are looking at microorganisms not being that useful, or the normal chemical processes not being that useful. If these are the scenarios, then in that case we see that uh, then we'll see that it is going to be useful. Then only we generally try to use them. Or if we are trying to use cost effective methods, then phyto extraction or phyto remediation methods would be used. Explain about the Samudrayan mission. So see, with regards to the Samudrayan mission, the thing is that just like Gaganyaan mission, which is the first manned mission to space, this is the first manned mission which will go and explore deep ocean. So that is what the Samudrayan mission is, and this is a project that has been taken by Ministry of Earth Sciences. So they will basically take it as a part of. So I'll just write it. Samudrayan mission. This is basically, you can say, a manned mission to explore deep seas. And Ministry of Earth Sciences has taken this project, and they basically will be running this. Potential applications and implications of artificial intelligence in governance. So first and foremost, when it comes to governance, just think of all the various values of governance. So how transparency can be maintained, how accountability can be maintained, how various services can be delivered to the target groups. At the same time, how exactly can they maintain subsidies, how exactly can government ensure that all the money that has to be spent on a certain scheme, that is going in the right direction or not. The entire tracking mechanism can be created with the help of artificial intelligence. So we see that there are these kind of concepts where it will become useful. At the same time, when it comes to the component of e-governance or mobile governance, these are areas which are extremely useful, and they can take a lot of help from artificial intelligence. Not only that, you might have seen that in the past few months the government also has been testing early warning systems, that if they can provide early warnings against any kind of natural disaster. So in these kind of cases also artificial intelligence will be very, very useful. Cloning concept. So in case of cloning, what we know is that we are trying to create an exact replica, right? We are trying to create an exact replica of uh, a single parent, meaning that you are taking cell from some organism, in this case largely animals, or even in case of humans, you are taking the cells and then you are replicating the cells, you are creating an exact copy of that animal or of that human, by taking those cells, and from there on doing the nuclear transfers. You said that some countries have banned cryptocurrencies, then who and how is it maintaining its value, and how and who will use it for transactions? So basically, see, many countries have banned it, but not all the countries have banned it, and it's not that it is completely banned system of money. It is being used. And when you trade in cryptocurrencies, the trading that happens in cryptocurrencies, it happens on the basis of its value. That today the value is something, tomorrow let's say RBI says that okay, fine, in India we are going to allow the use of cryptocurrencies. All of a sudden the value of cryptocurrencies will then increase, because then it will create a value for itself. So it's not that it is completely bad, and that's why it has a value. Please give insight to answer the question sent by me. See, uh, practically, Vivek, I'm very sorry, but this is not even possible. There are 50 mains questions that you have given. If there is something specific that you want to ask, like there are so many people who have their questions, then I can answer them. But those are answer, I mean, those are mains answers that you are asking us to give the answer. It will be impossible for me to do that. And some of those questions are like, you have asked me what is climate change and what is the role of technology in solving climate change. Just imagine how exactly it is even possible for me to answer this question. It will, I mean, it's such a huge question. It will take me 15-20 minutes to answer each and every question that you have asked, because that's why those are answers that you have to write. Please tell about the quark particles and the resultant merging of the particles into different subatomic particles. So basically, when it comes to all the particles that we have these quarks, and quarks are the origin of all the matter particles. All right. So there are two types of uh, particles that we have. We have quarks and we have bosons. Now, quarks, we say that these are matter particles. All right. Quarks are matter particles, and bosons are said to be force particles. So they are, bosons basically are related to any force that is generated inside the nucleus, and quarks are matter particles. So all the matter comes from quarks. Now what we see is that there are two particles that are derived from different combinations of quarks. So, and these are hadrons and leptons. So hadrons and leptons, they have their origin in quarks. Now what happens is that quarks basically have fractional charges, that they can have charges like plus 2 by 3 or minus 2 by 3, plus 1 by 3, minus 1 by 3, and so on. Now what happens is that they would combine, three of them would combine together and they would form one kind of particle, and so on. So all these things happen, and these hadrons then lead to formation of neutrons and protons. So neutrons and protons, they have their origin in hadrons. Whereas when it comes to leptons, in case of leptons, we see that there are three types of particles that originate from there. You have electrons, which you are familiar with, and then also there are muons and taus. Now muons and taus, they are highly unstable. They are highly unstable, whereas in case of electrons they are stable. So that's why this is how all these particles are, and these particles can come together and they can lead to the formation of an atom. So this is how all these particles are arranged. Significance of quantum computing, how can it revolutionize computing technologies? See, basically when it comes to quantum computing, understand that we are using the mechanism and we are using the concepts of quantum mechanics for computing purposes, and hence these will be the fastest computers that you can even imagine, and they will be much faster than even a supercomputer that exists today. So that's why first and foremost the computations will be completely different and complete much faster than anything that we have ever seen. At the same time there are a lot of implications that it will have, that for example it can lead to automation of a lot of things, and it can be a next revolution just like artificial intelligence. So that's why it can go two ways, that it might open up new avenues for us that we might have never even imagined, or it might also lead to cases where a lot of people might start ending up losing their jobs. So that's why it can really take these two extreme um, create these two extreme circumstances, and still to be known what will really happen. So it, as and when it starts developing, we'll see that there will be a lot of new arenas that it will be able to open up for us. Please explain scramjet. So in case of scramjet, what we are saying is that scramjet stands for supersonic combustion ramjet engine. So where we have a kind of engine which is also called as an air breathing engine. So air breathing meaning that we are using air as oxidizer, or oxygen itself from the atmosphere as oxidizer. So that is what happens in scramjet. Now in case of scramjet, they these engines will be traveling at a very fast speed, at hypersonic speeds. At hypersonic speeds. So engines will travel at hypersonic speeds, and while oxygen will keep on entering, because this oxygen can act as an oxidizer, hence we'll use it as an oxidizer for the combustion of the fuel. What is a B cell? B cell is a kind of cell in our body that actually is responsible for making antibodies for fighting against any infection or any antigen which is visiting the body. Strong versus weak artificial intelligence. Strong artificial intelligence versus weak is when we are designing the artificial intelligence in a manner that whatever they are thinking, or even if they are able to comprehend the data, they can only comprehend what we have asked them to comprehend. For example, if there is an AI which is translating from one language to another, so it only knows how to translate, it cannot play music for you. So, because it just knows how to do something, the only one thing. But when it comes to strong artificial intelligence, this would be an artificial intelligence that can think on its own, even for the things that it has not been trained for. It would be able to train itself for that as well, and it can do that job also. So that would be strong artificial intelligence. Saturn rings are in news. Yes, they are in the news because they are right now at an angle so that from the Earth the rings will not even be visible. So that's why they have been in the news. Of everything being pulled at one point, everything will basically emerge from that point. So that when happens, the exactly the opposite case of black hole, we say that it is the concept of white hole. Traditional knowledge digital library. So in case of traditional knowledge digital library, what we know is that we are creating a digital database of all the traditional knowledge that is there in India in all the different languages. So whatever language it belongs to, it will all be translated to five international languages: English, Japanese, French, German, and Spanish. So we have picked these five languages, and everything will be translated into these, and we made publicly available so that they cannot be patented by somebody else. Why PSLV known as the workhorse? As we discussed, that there are a lot of different activities that PSLV has been involved with, plus the kind of success that it has seen. The success rate is extremely high, and that also has led to these kind of uh, uh, this particular term that is used for it. Now, though, they have also started giving it once in a while. There are two extra pages where one page is dedicated to science. If we use paddy straw as one of the raw material for biofuel production instead of stubble burning, of course we can do that. And we have, I mean, we want to do that. The government also has been trying to make efforts there, and that is where center and the states, they need to work together so that they can come up with a solution to these kind of issues. Refer to that, and you can read them. We have to read complete 25 plus pages of newspapers daily? No, why do we have to? That is why I said that there are news analysis, etc., that are being done for you. Just refer to them. And even if you have to read the articles, read only the articles that we are covering in the newspaper analysis. So with that, we'll be able to uh, take as many important articles for you as possible. China's proposal theory of using genetically modified plants with bioluminescence, is it viable? It's a wait and watch situation. We'll have to see whether or not we are able to use it, or how exactly are they going about it. If they are successful, then it's a different story. Analysis, is it will it help in current covering current affairs? Yes, absolutely. If see, out of all the sources that we have, if you are following any one daily source, whether it is the video that we uh, do or live every morning at 10, or if not that, the CNA is a substitute for that, you can take it, so there's no issue with it. Exact difference I'm not getting between surrogate and IVF. They are same. There is no difference. Surrogacy and in vitro fertilization are exactly the same topics. Technology helps climate change in some extent. Yes, I mean, we want to use and we have been using it, uh, first and foremost to identify the certain problems, that where exactly climate change, also to analyze the data, the historical data that we have with climate change, and the future can also be predicted based on that. So for example, the recent reports also that have been published, for example, the report by UN that was published just yesterday, you'll see that there also they have talked about the future and what exactly happens in each and every future. At the same time, even in case of IPCC, whenever it does any analysis and comes out with any uh, plan or potentials, you'll see that they always talk in terms of the historic data and what does this historic data signify for the future. So there are a lot of things where at least analysis and understanding can be built. At the same time, technology will be very very useful in also combating a lot of problems associated with climate change, whether these are agricultural problems or food shortage problems or health related problems. In all these cases also it will be very very useful. What are blastocysts? So blastocysts, basically you can say these are bunch of cells which are produced just after the fertilization happens, or even before fertilization. Let's say when you see the cellular development happening for the first time. So inside, I mean, if it is cloning, it can be done outside. If it is normal reproduction, then after fertilization, we'll see that cell division will start, and after the cell division, a bunch of cells are created. So that bunch of cells will be called as blastocyst. Meaning of Rashesh. Meaning of Rashesh. It was the name of Lord Krishna, not another name given to Lord Krishna. I was thinking that you're asking about some kind of concept. Got confused for a couple of seconds. Please tell about Higgs boson and Large Hadron Collider. So Higgs boson, now boson, as I told you here, that boson basically is a force particle, and Higgs boson basically is related to it. There is a Higgs field, and in this particle is able to exist. So just know the basics, that it's related to the force that any nucleus is able to exert. Now Large Hadron Collider is where we have an experiment where we are trying to recreate the situations that existed at the time of Big Bang. So that's a Large Hadron Collider. It will try to collide two particles of hadrons. All right, it will try to collide particles of hadrons, and by that we want to create those kind of conditions that used to exist at the time of the birth of the universe. So that is precisely what the Large Hadron Colliders do is doing. Why stubble burning happens in north and not in south? Largely, it's because of the cropping cycle that we have in states like Punjab and Haryana, where the farmers, they very quickly have to switch to the next season, and that basically causes those kind of problems. And in the other parts, wherever, even if we are growing paddy, we actually don't have those kind of that kind of pressure on the farmer, and that's why we don't see these things happening in other states of the country. Even today, interestingly, yesterday only, Supreme Court also had observed this and said that don't blame the farmer on this. Also, try to understand the side of the story of the farmer, and what state and the centers governments need to do so that these kind of situations can be handled better. Indian Express is also an important newspaper for UPSC. Absolutely, yes, it is. I mean, largely we say that even if somebody is reading one of these two newspapers, it's enough for you, because all the important articles either here or there, either this month or that month, today or tomorrow will come. So that's why any one of these two will be very, very good newspaper for you. Where to watch PIB? PIB basically will be PIB analysis is available on your Byjus exam prep app. If you go to the app, PIB analysis is available there. Pathogens and antigens. So pathogens, basically, when it comes to pathogens, we are saying that pathogens are any disease causing germ would be called as a pathogen. So for example, a virus which causes some disease, or a bacteria that causes some disease, will be called as a pathogen. And antigen is anything against which our body responds or our body attacks. So for example, every pathogen is an antigen, but there will be other antigens also. So for example, there could be some chemicals which can also, or toxins that can also act as an antigen. What is North Korea's spy satellite launch? Yesterday it happened. I mean, they said that we are making a spy satellite. And with North Korea, uh, any news that comes out of North Korea, it's almost impossible to say anything about it, because they'll have some theory about something, but we cannot guarantee that whatever they are saying is actually correct or not. Once again, explain about launchers, PSLV and GSLV, their types and ranges, etc., how to remember them. So when it comes to PSLV, just go to those two particular sites, slides, where I have just written down all the information about PSLV. For example, lightweight satellite used for polar satellites, launching polar satellites, Earth observation satellites. Uh, then after that, the lifetime is less. They take 1.5 hours to complete one revolution. So all these facts about PSLV. And with GSLV, G basically is what? Geostationary or geosynchronous. So meaning that you will be launching satellites to geosynchronous orbits. So communication satellites get launched there. So largely it will be used for communication satellite launching. These are heavy satellites. They would take one whole day to complete one revolution, because they are far off, 35,786 kilometers. So all these things, just see them together. Your experience in examinations. My UPSC journey was, now it is exactly 10 years old. And journey, I'll tell you about, more than anything, I'll tell you about a mistake that I did. And probably there will be others, some of you also, who will probably do these mistakes. So my mistake, frankly, was optional subject. I started with mathematics as my optional subject, and then I switched because there were a lot of people around me, my friends and my colleagues, and everyone who were preparing. Uh, Everyone, just as soon as I would say that I'm taking mathematics, I'm preparing with mathematics as an optional, they would simply say that you're mad, that you will never qualify if you take mathematics as an optional. So pick something which is an easier subject. A lot of my friends were uh, preparing with sociology as an optional, so I switched to sociology. And believe it or not, sociology was a more difficult subject for me as compared to mathematics. I was doing better in mathematics as compared to sociology. That was one big mistake that led to me not being there. Probably if it was mathematics, it would have been an easier job for me to get through. Now, looking into the perspective now, it's easier to say perhaps, but I would still say that uh, this area belongs to me, and it's easier for me to do anything that is technical or anything that is science and technology related. uh, and that's why mathematics was a better choice for me. And I switched in peer pressure, because everyone just kept telling me that this is not an option that you should take. So it happened. Otherwise the preparation was going on very solid. So that's why these things many a times matter, that not anything that everyone says is always correct. Some of, let's say, because you have to understand that your fellow aspirants are also aspirants, so they are also going through the process. Now, saying this is easier for me, because back then there was nobody to tell me that okay, fine, I mean, you can back yourself and go with this kind of optional as well. But today at least we have people all around available, and you at least would have all the mentors who are available for you, or, or the faculties who are available for you, who can help you and guide you with regards to what's correct and what's not. But always be objective in your decision, and your decision should not be clouded by because somebody else said something and you got afraid, you could not back yourself, you could not have that confidence in yourself. So that's why these things will sometimes matter. Once list all the important topics you expect like 5G. It's too early to say that because we are still in November. So this kind of list I generally start making in the month of March, because by March things would have settled and would still have some idea about what are the topics that can become important for this year's examination. So this is an exercise that ultimately I'll do, and I'll do it for all of you, but not now, in March and April. Do we get holiday when election is in Rajasthan? I'm afraid not. I'm not sure actually whether that's the case or not. But if at all due to elections you miss your class, please at least try and uh, go through all the recorded part of that particular lecture and get back to the faculty on the next day. But I'm not sure whether there's an off or not. Is monthly magazines enough or need to study individual like PIB? See, my opinion here always would be that if you can go through the daily sources, that should be the first go to source for you. If you can't, if you think that that's not something for you, then in that case the monthly sources can be useful. But if you can at all, always try that you go through the daily sources rather than the monthly sources. That will be much better for you. What is the use of spy balloon and how is it created? There were controversies that happened with spy balloons between China and the US. But when it comes to spy balloons, these will be like weather balloons, and they will act in a very similar manner. And in these kind of scenarios, what we observe is that they actually can uh, be launched, and they would uh, will be they, in a manner, I mean, just oversimplify things, you can say that they will be more like uh, the communication satellites, how communication satellites work. Similarly, they'll also try to work, and they'll also try to catch signals, etc. That is how the things work. What is the supercomputer Vikram Param? Vikram Param is a supercomputer by ISRO, and basically for their internal functioning, and it doesn't really transform to something which is useful for us directly, but something that ISRO is going to use. Why can't we use PSLV and then transfer to Geo? We can do that if the satellite is lightweight. If the satellite is heavy, then we can't do that. Management optional is good or not, it depends completely on you, that where do you belong. And if, for example, let's say if you are an MBA or you come from a similar background, uh, then in that case it becomes a good option for you to take. But depends on where you are. And for any optional subject that you want to judge, first and foremost judge on two basic things. One, the syllabus. Go through the entire syllabus, because many times what also happens is that we come across a lot of students, for example, in case of let's say geography, that somebody would simply come to us and say that I I'm interested in geography. Now, what happens is that when somebody who's new and they say that they are interested in geography, they perhaps are interested in physical geography, that they like studying about geomorphology or physiography of India and so on, and they think that they are interested in geography. But if you are from geography background, geography optional background, you know that geography goes way beyond that. That's a very small part of entire geography syllabus. So that's why syllabus becomes a big indicator, plus the previous year questions, especially if you are coming from the same background. Let's say you are saying management, then if you are from management background, go through the topics first, try to understand whether or not it is helpful for you or not, because you might have done management in one of the branches. Maybe you are very good with finance, or maybe very good with marketing, but there will be HR questions as well. So you have to understand, operations questions also will come, so you also have to understand all these parts as well also. So is sociology difficult or no? I wouldn't say sociology was difficult by any stretch of imagination. I I mean, reading sociology, I don't find it difficult at all. But I would say my acumen was not built for sociology more than anything. Mm. How carbon nanotubes are helpful in spacecraft? So carbon nanotubes basically, because they are lightweight and they are very strong, and that is the main reason why they'll be useful in spacecrafts and aircrafts both. I don't have any mates with me to for preparing any suggestions. For uh, people who are completely alone in this preparation, I would always say that at least once in a while be in touch with the mentors. Always be in touch with the mentors, so that if not anything, at least you know whether you are going the same right direction or not. If there is any course correction required or not. What happens is that if uh, you have people around, or there are other aspirants who are also preparing along with you, then in that case course corrections keep happening automatically. But in those cases when you are isolated, let's say because you are working or you are in college somewhere, then in that case it becomes difficult for you. So be in touch with the mentors for that sense. If I send you an email, will you reply? I'll completely try my best. For example, tomorrow onwards, at least for the next 10-15 days, I don't have any class, so I'll be relatively available. I have star marked a lot of emails that I received over the past, I would say, a couple of months also, because uh, the last time I took a class, and between this class, I also fell ill and I could not reply to some of the emails. But in general, I would. So that's why if you have any question, you are always welcome to send your questions to me. How to handle questions from unknown and unexpected topics in science and technology? So it's not only about science and technology, it will once in a while also happen in some of the other subjects also. Now when you come across a topic, or let's say a question which is completely unknown for you, for example in 2018 there was a question that was asked on Bose-Einstein statistics. Now this was a cruel question to ask. I mean, I can't imagine asking these kind of questions in the mains examination, but they asked this question in 2018. That discuss briefly about what is Bose-Einstein statistics, and how did it revolutionize this field of physics. This was the question that they had asked. Now, in all these kind of questions, when it comes to these questions, first and foremost see whether you know anything about this question. Is there even a single sentence that you can write? If you know that, okay, I have a limitation, but perhaps I can write 20-30 words, I know this much that I can write 3-4 sentences, then do that. But come out of that question also quickly. Don't waste time, because if you don't know, you don't know, you can't do anything there. Instead, I would suggest that go on to the next question and try writing better answers in the upcoming questions, so that you can gain what, or let's say a part of it you can gain in the other questions, what you might have lost in such a question. But once in a while these things do happen, that not only in science. You'll see that I think 2019 paper, GS paper 1, they asked about colonization and decolonization of Malay Peninsula in world history. Now in world history, even if you read, you do not really go to the colonization and decolonization, especially of the Malay Peninsula region. But they asked it. So sometimes it can happen in any subject, and in all those kind of question, the thing is simple, that you have to ensure that if you know, great. If you can write even two sentences, please do that. At least get 1 mark there or 2 marks there, and quickly move on to the next question. Is sociology hard? I wouldn't say that. I mean, one of the most popular subjects has been sociology, has had a very high success rate as well. A lot of toppers have come from sociology background. So I wouldn't say. That's why I said that it was more about my acumen than about the subject. Do you know Tamil, sir? No, sorry, I don't know Tamil. What do you think of Tamil optional? Okay, so when it comes to the optional subject, any language, all right, any language optional, the literature optional, I consider them as a good optional to take. The reason is that they are completely static. There is no chance that they can ask you any current affairs there. So the syllabus always remains static. And at the same time, what you'll also find is that if you have been through last 15, 20 years of question papers, the questions also repeat. The questions repeat because they can't go to a new topic, because it's about the literature of the subject. And that is where you have to also understand that knowing the language and knowing the literature are two different things. So, for example, I know English as a language, but I have no clue about English literature. But in Hindi, I know the language and the literature, so perhaps I can still manage there. But in case of English literature, I couldn't, because I don't know about the English literature at all. I know the language. So that's why, for anyone who wants to take language as an optional, always understand the difference between knowing the language versus knowing the literature. And you will be asked about literature and not the language. So if you think you are good with it, great. But if you think that you're not, then in that case, I wouldn't suggest. I'm taking psychology optional and I don't have any background in it. It's purely because I read the syllabus and did PYQ analysis and thought uh, it can be good optional too. So fine. I mean, if you think that you will be able to manage, it's great. But one thing that I would suggest is that read a couple of chapters. All right, read a couple of chapters, then answer a question related to that chapter from the previous year question papers. Take one question which is related to that chapter and show it to somebody. Show it to somebody, anyone you know, or maybe the mentors, so that or submit it to our email IDs, so that we'll be able to help you analyze whether you're doing good or whether you are on the right track or not. You said that near the earth satellites run faster and away they will be slow, but my doubt is how satellites run twice in a day, or does it run on the basis of fuel or gravitation? Actually, a combination of both, because fuel will be running one fuel basically will be making the other side of force, and gravitation will be the other side of force. So it is a mix of both. Actually, both of them will work simultaneously here. Which easy to write with. So always grip matters, because you will have to keep writing. Correct. You have to keep writing, and you have to write 4,000 words in a span of 180 minutes, that is 3 hours. So for 3 hours writing 4,000 words also means that you should have a decent speed, and that also can be guaranteed many a times when you have a pen which has a good flow and has a good grip. These two things, small things, but sometimes they matter. Interview experience, I could not, because the optional marks was very low, so I could not get through the mains. So mains, my sociology marks were bad. Which optional is more static? So in case of optional subjects, what we observe is that a lot of literature subjects, they are all static. A lot of technical subjects are all static. For example, all the engineering subjects are static, all the science subjects are static. uh, areas where some kind of current affairs or current events keep on happening, only they are the ones where they have a part of dynamic syllabus. Optionals are lesser because these are all the science related optionals, where we have seen that one of the most popular and most preferred has been agriculture, where we see that a lot of people actually go with agriculture as their optional. Plus then there are a lot of science subjects, so mainly people take optional from their background. Examination of UPSC, right? Yes, you can. You have to be above 21 years of age, so then after that you are good to go. So you do not have to do anything extra. I would rather have you contact the mentors and talk to them and get their opinion on your optional subjects, because I will, whatever I tell you right now will be in one or two sentences or maybe five sentences. They can spend some time with you and help you strategize better. I'm good at maths till class 12th. However, completed CA, so don't I know paper one syllabus and it is easy, but paper two, yeah, paper two is very different and it's more of pure mathematics. So that's why people from the background of mathematics are better. Even for example, people who come from engineering background, the first paper for them also is pretty good. Second paper, where group theory, ring theory, etc., when they start to come, that is where the problems begin for a lot of people. Need to complete NCRT books before entering the UPSC syllabus? Not necessarily. Depends from subject to subject and also from candidate to candidate. A lot of things that we teach, I mean, whether it's me or all the other faculties, we always try to take it in a manner that NCRTs become parallel for you and it doesn't become a prerequisite for you. So don't worry about that. In sociology optional, how relevant the current affairs are? Not relevant in paper one, somewhat relevant in paper two, but very less. I mean, almost you can say not really relevant. Should complete one revolution. So according to 12 hours, you will have to calculate where do you need to keep the satellite so that it completes its revolution in 12 hours. And this we find is almost at 20,200 kilometers above the surface of the earth. What is the term generic medicine and why is it called generic? Generic because it belongs to a generic brand, that although the formulation and ingredients are the same as the patented medicine, but is being manufactured by a generic company, that is some other company. Agriculture plus which second optional for Indian Forest Service? Depends on the background, depends on what you have done in your graduation. That is where you should select it from. If you want to take botany, zoology, yes, they are available as optional subjects. You can take them. How did we get to know that moon has 11 days equal to one Earth day? That's a basic calculation on the rotation and revolution periods of moon, because moon's rotation and revolution periods both are different. So, for example, our rotation completes in 24 hours. There, I mean, moon's rotation completes in almost 27, 28 days. What is DNA fingerprint and what's the use? So as we discussed about DNA fingerprint in our lecture, that DNA fingerprint is when we are looking at matching a partial or complete set of DNA or the genetic material between two people, maybe for identification, maybe for analysis of DNA, or maybe for analysis of the genetic material of the human, or maybe of the animals also. So that's why they will be useful in a lot of different ways. Again, sorry for this because a lot of you have asked about optional subjects. I That's why I said ki about the optional subjects, it's better if you get in touch with the mentors, because me telling you something in just one line or two lines is not the correct approach. So it's better if you go discuss with them at length and understand your position. So that will be better for you. How is it possible that we always see the same side of the moon? Now, this basically happens because of a concept called as tidal locking. The concept of tidal locking. Now, the concept of tidal locking basically says that the rotation and the revolution periods of the moon is the same. So, for moon, the period of rotation is equal to the period of revolution, and that is why while it rotates it also revolves, so it only presents one side of it towards the earth. So that is what also is called as tidal locking. I will give my attempt in 2025, then science and tech PPT is sufficient along with addition of current affairs. Yes, the static issues will remain exactly the same. After prelims time, how many months before mains examination? Almost 3 months of time you will have between prelims and mains. If the Earth revolves around the Sun and then after 180 degrees revolution, why don't we fall out of the Earth? We don't fall because, first of all, gravitation does not let us go from away from the Earth, and rotation and revolution also plays a role here. When this class is over, what to do for science and technology? Uh, Remember me first of all. Second, go through all the annotated ppts, all the notes that we have seen over the course of last 11-12 days, and if required, go through the recordings that are also available for you, but just revise everything first, all the notes that we have. That's very important. There is no other source, no third source required for your examination. The classes are very useful for us. Oh, in a way of all of your presentation, make everything as easy as understandable. Thank you so much for the compliments. Example, let's say even in the CNA, the text-based CNA or the Hindu analysis that we do, we even mention the subject there itself. So you always would know, even if you refer to the discussions that we are doing, we are writing the names of the subjects also to make it easier for you, that where exactly it becomes relevant. Again, a lot of strategy related doubts are also there. Again, these are questions when you talk to a mentor, they'll be able to give you enough time so that you can get in touch with them. For example, uh, Mustaba, you have a question that about how to prepare along with job. So it's an entire strategy. So rather discuss this strategy in great depth and detail with the mentor. If you are having any doubts, or let's say if you are having any trouble connecting to them, uh, let me know. I'll get you in touch with them. But it would be better if you do that, because they'll be able to spend some 10-15 minutes with you and guide you holistically. My father says every time that after qualifying the mains, why they can't clear personality test. All of the students who are unable to clear the interview, as a result, they can't clear the exam. All of their efforts and hard work would be worst. that time I cannot say anything to about. See, if you are aiming for something high, you have to, you know that okay, there are problems that you might face. It's a difficult examination because of the competition, because of xyz factors. But then I mean, nothing good in life comes easy. We know about that also. If it is coming easily, it also means that it's not the best thing that you could have done. So obviously that's the case, and that's the case with anyone who's preparing for this examination. But you know, and you can't think about the failures, because if you, I mean, we say philosophically that you manifest things, that you manifest what you think. That if you start thinking of what happens if I fail, what happens if I don't succeed, this is, look what happened for that, with that person who prepared for 4 years and could not qualify, and there are so many stories there. But instead of looking at the failure stories, learn from that failure, and let's not uh, uh, integrate that failure in our lives. That's the only thing that we can learn from those failures, instead of just being afraid because of those failures. Failures will happen in every walk of life. Every day there are things where you may not have succeeded in a manner that you wanted. So it's not only about the examination. In general, this is what life is. So we cannot determine things based on that. Is PPT and current affairs enough for all subjects? I can't comment for other subjects and how strategizing, how other teachers are strategizing. It won't be nice of me to comment on that. Your cursive writing is excellent. Oh, used to be better actually, but now it's not, because writing on these screens is not as easy as writing with your pen on a paper. It used to be better, now it's not. But I have some knowledge of it. Is it going to become an issue for an IS officer? No, not at all. Not at all. Language is not a barrier. See, when it comes to the civil services and the people who will qualify, you would go with two language papers also. One will be compulsory English, and one will be a language paper. And language paper can be of your choice. There is no compulsion. And it's not that if you don't know a certain language, there will be a problem. There's nothing like that. I have my friends who come from a pure Hindi background and know nothing about many of the other languages. But as they have been transferred to any part as an IPS officer, when they go to any part, they also get trained so that they can converse with people who are locals there, and they would learn there. So, for example, if they are going to any state where they don't know the language, if they are going to Bengal, they would need to learn basic Bengali. If they are coming to Karnataka, they'll need basic Kannada. So wherever they are going, they would need to know that basic language, and that will happen as and when the job happens. So that's not a concern at all, not knowing a certain language. It depends on where you are and which state you are serving in. Is in the coming months. I don't have such doubt, but I have to ask the syllabus and how to start preparing this strategy for science and technology. That how exactly one needs to prepare for science and technology. The first 45 minutes of the first lecture of this series of my 12 lectures, please go through that. More important from essay perspective more than any other subject's point of view. So whenever you are starting to prepare for essay, that is probably the time where at least you can revisit it. Hmm. Again, I'm just repeating myself that strategy related doubts, please uh, go to the mentors. They'll be in a better position, because if I had that kind of time, I would have taken all those questions, but they will not make any sense if I just discuss them in like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It would be better if you consider talking to the mentors. They are equally qualified to answer any question that you have. Sukhoi aircraft. Sukhoi basically is a Russian aircraft, Russian fighter aircraft, which we actually also have taken from Russia, and we also have various versions that we have been using in India. I've taken almost all the questions that you had. I may have missed some, I think, but I've tried to take as many as possible. See, there are some questions that you have asked which are purely questions which need answer writing. So I really can't answer those questions. If there is a doubt that you have, I can answer those questions. And you also have to be, just understand that you also have to be practical about it while answering your asking your questions. Observatory, we have been able to detect the gravitational waves. So this LIGO right now, it is based in US, but we see that other countries also have been working on their gravitational wave observatory, including India, which is using the same LIGO technology and working along with LIGO to build something called as Indigo LIGO. And this Indigo LIGO would be the Indian project. Question. Uh, so class 6 to 8th largely, all right, class 6 to 8th NCRT books of science are very very important, and apart from that, class 9th and 10th, only certain topics like gravitation and the couple of chapters based on human body in class 10th uh, uh, NCRT book, only these kind of topics, structure of atom being another one, they can be important, otherwise not. All right. So if you have any further questions, you can always write to us at islive@byjus.com, or if you have any specific questions for me, you can always reach me at rasesh.kumar@byjus.com. So if you have any specific questions with regards to the subject or anything that you want to ask, you can always reach me at this email ID, or otherwise you have your email IDs, that is islive@byjus.com. You can reach us at this email ID also. All right. So with that, I hope that I've been able to answer most of your queries. If you have further queries, as I said, you are always welcome to ask those questions. So with this, I end the sessions on science and technology. Tomorrow onwards, you have your sessions on environment and ecology that will be taken by Mukesh sir, and he'll be here tomorrow at 5. So this is it from my end. I wish you all the best. Please do well. Please make sure that you have all the right things at your place. You have all the right strategies in your mind, and you also start writing as many answers as possible. Please make sure that it becomes a part of your habit, it becomes a part of your daily routine, if not at least weekly routine, that you write a couple of answers and submit it to us. Please make sure that it becomes a part of your preparation. So with that, I wish you all the best, and if you have any further doubts, you are always welcome to reach me. Thank you.